I previously held the view that most people were inherently honest and benevolent. I endeavored to emulate this myself, but in recent times I have become somewhat more cynical and less easily deceived. However, I still occasionally succumb to my more trusting nature. There are instances when I am too generous and subsequently exploited. This experience erodes my faith in humanity. However, on occasion, an individual or event helps to rebuild this faith, even if only to a limited extent. When I was younger, I was overly accommodating. Now that I am 31, I have gained some insight from my experiences. Despite my initial naivety, I had already accumulated a few mistakes by the time I was 22. I had recently graduated from college with a degree in computer science and was immediately enamored with Natalie, who was 4 years my senior and pursuing an English degree at the same institution. Natalie aspired to become a writing instructor and obtain an MFA. Despite our contrasting backgrounds and interests, we bonded remarkably well. Natalie's background included having lived in Greece until the age of 10 and having relocated to the United States from Japan specifically for college. I am indebted to Natalie for her role in significantly enhancing my English proficiency. It is interesting to note that I also acquired a working knowledge of Greek from her, although she never made any effort to learn Japanese. After just 2 months of dating, we became exclusive partners. In retrospect, I have come to recognize that I have consistently allowed myself to be drawn into relationships, even during my teenage years. If a girl expressed interest, I would readily accept, assuming it was the polite thing to do. I should clarify that I genuinely liked Natalie, but in hindsight, I realized that she also exerted significant pressure on me to pursue the relationship. After completing my degree, I secured and Natalie was employed as a software developer with a competitive salary. She was completing her Bachelor of Arts in English and working part-time at a clothing store in the mall. I was somewhat naive and accommodating, always trying to be agreeable. I even allowed her to move into my residence without paying rent, on the understanding that she would contribute financially. Despite the fact that Natalie was employed in a position that required her to purchase groceries, we ended up eating out most of the time. Consequently, she did not contribute financially at all. She informed me that she had been able to pay for her education through scholarships. I had no reason to doubt her assertion. After she had graduated, she proposed to me. I found this somewhat peculiar because I had grown up with the expectation that it would be the man who would propose marriage. In the United States, gender roles are less rigid than in many other countries. Therefore, it was not unusual for a woman to propose marriage to her partner. My parents, who live in Japan, initially disapproved of my choice of spouse as she was of a different race. However, Natalie's charm and eloquence eventually won them over. As I did not speak English, I was responsible for translating for my parents. I am grateful to Natalie for her patience in this regard. Her parents, who are Greek Americans, were supportive of our relationship. They did not view my age difference as an issue. In the early stages of our relationship, I informed Natalie that several of my distant relatives had been members of the Imperial Japanese Army during World War II and that some of them had perished in kamikaze missions. I also disclosed that I had been engaged in the practice of judo throughout my life. My intention was not to boast or appear trendy, it was simply a response to her inquiries about my background and interests. In turn, Natalie revealed a profoundly detailed account of her father's involvement with the mafia in Greece and his subsequent flight to the United States with a new identity to evade prosecution for a criminal act he had committed. This occurred during a period when at the time, we were still in the early stages of our relationship and not yet engaged in a serious, committed relationship. I believe that she was attempting to impress me with her background and demonstrate that she had a certain degree of credibility and authenticity. In my personal opinion, she is not particularly associated with gangster culture, despite her father's involvement in the mafia. However, as our relationship progressed, Natalie began to reveal more about her background. She was forthcoming about her father's role as a mafia hitman, admitting that she was attempting to impress me and gain my approval. It appeared that she did not foresee a long-term future with me, and thus, she revealed this information in a seemingly innocuous manner, hoping to enhance my perception of her. I chose to accept this revelation and move forward, assuming that her father was no longer actively involved in the mafia. Auto mechanic. I did not dwell on it for an extended period. Fast forward a couple of years and I believe our marriage is going well. We have even had a daughter named Katie, and I was able to purchase a house with a down payment and a monthly mortgage. Additionally, I took care of Natalie's school loans. It was later revealed that her scholarship claims were fabricated, which, in retrospect, should have been a significant indicator of her lack of veracity. After spending some time as a homemaker, Natalie informed me of her desire to pursue an MFA. However, none of the nearby universities accepted her due to her low undergraduate GPA. Nevertheless, she was admitted to a private for-profit university. Profit University accepted Natalie's application despite her low undergraduate GPA, offering her a scholarship for the sum of $20,000 per semester. This is a considerable expense. My daughter, Katie, is now 7 years old, and people are often astonished to see her. Her mixed Japanese and Greek heritage is a source of great pride for me, as I am sure it is for any parent. However, I have become more aware of the necessity to provide her with the best possible education. I came to the realization that Natalie was not an optimal partner. At best, she was a lazy opportunist; at worst, she was a shameless gold digger. At the time, I was not as perceptive as I am now. I was not aware that she might have been using me merely as a means of financing her education and having a child so that she could secure a free house and child support before divorcing me and taking everything. At times, I allow my imagination to run wild, conjuring up the notion that perhaps Natalie did not have such a clear-cut plan and that she did, in fact, love me at one point. In truth, I was gainfully employed while Natalie was attending classes at her parents' residence on a regular basis. A few years later, Natalie completed her MFA. I continued to believe that our marriage was progressing well. I had a reasonable work schedule, spent time with my wife and daughter, and engaged in all the typical family activities. We went out to dinner and on trips, for instance. Despite the trips and celebrations of anniversaries typical of a married couple, Natalie had consistently expressed her love for me, calling me her love of her life. However, she abruptly declared that she needed space, which I now recognize as a euphemism for, "I've been cheating on you for a while now and I don't care." If it is difficult to comprehend that she would make such a claim. When I inquired about the possibility of her being unfaithful, she responded that she simply needed time for herself. I was perplexed by her response and demanded further clarification. I was ultimately forced to confront the reality that she was contemplating a separation. I was taken aback by her decision and found myself in a challenging position. I was uncertain about the future and the financial implications of maintaining two households. Despite these concerns, I remained committed to the marriage and continued to support my wife and child financially. Natalie permitted me to reside in her bedroom in the house, ostensibly to provide her with space. She was generally agreeable, allowing me to visit my daughter on Sundays and feign familial cohesion for a brief period. However, after just a month of my stay at the Motel 6, she abruptly informed me of her desire to divorce me. I was profoundly distressed by this turn of events. The classic line, "I need to find myself," was uttered. It was a transparent attempt at self-justification. The news of the impending divorce was not a complete surprise; it was more like the final straw. I had to inquire again about the possibility of her being involved with someone else. She was unwavering in her assertion that she did not love me. I had already come to terms with the situation, so I was not as distressed when Natalie informed me of her intention to leave. However, I was unprepared for the prospect of sharing custody of our child with her instead of maintaining a stable and happy family dynamic. I was particularly vulnerable to her manipulations. Natalie was not interested in sharing custody; she sought sole custody too. The situation deteriorated further when Natalie began making unsubstantiated allegations about my behavior at the Motel 6. She informed her parents of these allegations and presented them as evidence in court proceedings. Additionally, she accused me of exhibiting aggressive behavior during our 3-year-old daughter's judo practice. A year-long process ensued. I attempted to defend myself by stating that her claims were unfounded. However, she proceeded to allege that I had been emotionally and verbally abusive towards her. This was implausible, given that she had requested space and subsequently removed me from the family home. Instead of accepting responsibility for her actions, she simply dismissed my statements as untruthful. The entire process was characterized by ugliness and disorder. The judge, who was relatively young but seemed jaded beyond her years, sided with Natalie. The judge denied me custody and only granted me supervised visitation rights. As Katie grew older and started understanding words, Natalie poisoned her mind against me to the point where Katie refused to see me, even for supervised visits. It is unclear whether Katie herself said, "I don't want to see my dad," but she always relayed that our daughter she conveyed her disinterest in communication through text messages. At times, I hoped to obtain an admission on an audio recording that I was never offensive and that she was a fabricator of falsehoods. However, I believe she was also concerned about the potential consequences of such an admission, so she persisted in communicating through texts, where she could exercise greater control over her statements. A year passed with no resolution. I remain responsible for the mortgage on a house I am unable to occupy. I was abruptly dismissed from my position without prior notification. Subsequently, I was informed by my superior that I was being terminated from my regular employment. This was a surprising turn of events, particularly given that my role did not involve any misconduct or unsatisfactory performance. As time passed, my former colleagues informed me that there were rumors circulating within the office suggesting that my ex-wife had contacted the Human Resources Department with allegations of misconduct. My wife contacted our Human Resources Department and made false allegations against me, stating that I was not paying child support, that I was obsessed, and that I was an offensive husband. In retrospect, I realized that I should have immediately informed my supervisor about my divorce and warned them that my former spouse could potentially exhibit erratic behavior. I sent a text message to Natalie to inquire about the situation, but she appeared unaware of the circumstances and had mutual friends swear me to secrecy. They informed me that Natalie had become a composition teacher and subsequently, she obtained a position at a community college after attaining an MFA. It would appear that she elected to do so only after the child and spousal support I had been paying became a standard, regardless of my income. Then, for reasons of her own, she proceeded to sabotage my career. Fortunately, I had a plethora of references from my previous position and a highly sought-after skill set, which meant that I was confident I would not remain unemployed for long. However, I was concerned about how to maintain the child support, spousal support and mortgage payments for Natalie without depleting my savings. I required a source of income that would allow me to maintain my current standard of living, so I began driving for Uber. I continued this while also interviewing with various companies. I had accumulated sufficient funds to avoid accepting any position while simultaneously working as a rideshare driver. One day, I picked up a passenger named Victoria. She was approximately my age, 4 months older, and worked in graphic design. She had Italian heritage but had lived in the USA her entire life and did not speak the language. We began conversing, and before long, we were officially dating. She was fully aware of my circumstances, and the most notable aspect was that this was the inaugural relationship in which I did not feel compelled to designate someone as my girlfriend. My legal counsel attempted to negotiate with Natalie's counsel to reduce my monthly obligations or alter visitation rights, but these efforts were unsuccessful. Natalie's counsel presented documentation asserting that her employment was merely part-time. Despite the passage of time, I was unable to meet her lifestyle needs. It is noteworthy that Natalie herself never showed up to these meetings. Instead, her lawyer represented her. Furthermore, she filed a restraining order against me, preventing me from entering my own house. This was done to support her false narrative about me being offensive. In hindsight, I do have some judo training, but I never really used it to hurt anyone, even in self-defense. In terms of self-defense, my training has equipped me with the ability to hold back, even when I might otherwise be inclined to act in a more aggressive manner. This is a quality that my training partners have commented on, noting that I often refrain from using my full range of abilities. This concern for the comfort of others has led to a period of dating with Victoria, which has spanned several months. During this time, I have secured employment in the technology sector, with a salary that is higher than my previous position. In contrast to Natalie, Victoria has her own residence and has not been inclined to move in with me. In fact, she has inquired about my preference regarding moving in with her. I find comfort in my one-bedroom apartment and am drawn to the idea of taking a more gradual approach with her. She was entirely at ease with the circumstances and proceeded to inform me of her intention to pursue an Associate of Arts degree in graphic design at a local community college. It became evident that she possesses a natural aptitude for the subject matter and has already demonstrated proficiency in her professional role, despite the absence of formal education. However, her prospective employer has stipulated the necessity of an academic qualification at the post-secondary level for an official promotion. This turn of events is particularly intriguing, given that Victoria's English instructor, a core requirement for her degree, is none other than my former spouse. It is curious that Victoria never divulges any information about our relationship to her teacher. I have asked her to maintain confidentiality. Victoria goes above and beyond, becoming friends with the teacher and establishing a close rapport. Over the next few weeks, she gains the teacher's trust and confidence, ultimately excelling in the course while maintaining her friendship with the teacher. Most intriguingly, Victoria records a conversation in which Natalie admits to working at the college full-time. A few drinks and some casual conversation were sufficient to prompt Natalie to divulge information. The teacher was unaware that she was conversing with her former romantic partner. It is interesting to observe how these situations evolve, particularly when an individual believes they can trust another as a friend. In this case, Victoria handled the situation with composure and recorded Natalie making light of her driving for Uber. This is a remarkable instance of irony, given that the individual in question possesses a master's degree in computer science yet is engaged in the relatively low-status occupation of taxi driving. Victoria's approach was meticulous and methodical, gradually recording Natalie's admissions of untruthfulness and ridicule. She disparages her exes, portraying them as inferior individuals. Victoria successfully recorded Natalie admitting that her former partner was a timid and insecure individual. She also revealed that he was not particularly kind or affectionate. Natalie then proceeded to mock his Japanese accent, which was perceived as an act of ignorance. The situation is highly problematic and indicative of a troubling pattern of behavior. Even if he made physical contact with her or their daughter. "Oh, Natalie, if you continue to interact with me in this manner, you will face severe consequences. Should he ever attempt to harm our daughter, I would take drastic measures, such as poisoning him." Approximately a week later, I presented the judge with a fabricated emotional display and successfully persuaded her to order him to pay a substantial sum. I even managed to have him dismissed from his position, with an asterisk next to it. Why would I do that if he is, in fact, he is, at least ostensibly, a decent individual? His actions, however, suggest otherwise. He is prone to engaging in frivolous and inconsequential interactions with Victoria and Natalie. On such occasions, Victoria would often show me her phone, displaying recordings of the interactions. I had already amassed a substantial amount of incriminating evidence. However, Victoria then informed me of an incident involving a certain piece de la resistance. This was a moment when Natalie, who is 28 years of age, discussed her admiration for attractive young men in her English class. The majority of the men in question were between the ages of 19 and 21. At the age of 33, Natalie displays a proclivity for extramarital relationships. She openly discusses her sexual encounters with students as though it were a common occurrence. In fact, she was engaged in sexual relations with her classmates while still married. She speaks of these relationships with a casualness as though it were a sport. In her shared office, she laughs about having sexual intercourse with a professor on his desk without even cleaning it or informing him afterwards. She even jokes that the professor must have had sexual relations with her as well. One might reasonably inquire whether some of those students were sufficiently informed to have passed their courses. In fact, Victoria provided the names of specific students. While this is undoubtedly unpleasant, it is not yet clear whether there has been a violation of any laws. She may deny it when questioned, but it seems more appropriate for the school to consider the matter and decide whether there has been any wrongdoing. Victoria has already completed her associate's degree and received a promotion at work. She has arranged a meeting with one of the top administrators at the school to discuss something urgent. Furthermore, she presents the administrator with the recording. In response, the administrator expresses gratitude and promises to address the situation. The most striking aspect of the recording is when Natalie boasts about bringing students to her residence, developing intimate relationships with them, and even engaging in substance use with them, while her roommate, Katie, was also present. I did not delay in contacting my legal counsel. In addition to sharing the recordings with my lawyer, I first reached out to them. The police proceeded to take action as follows. Natalie was dismissed from her position, had all her academic qualifications revoked due to academic dishonesty, and was banned from teaching. The students who were subpoenaed for questioning were not expelled from school but were given a stern warning to refrain from any romantic involvement with other students and to avoid any contact with school employees. Law enforcement officials discovered pills at Natalie's residence, and she is now facing the consequences of her actions. She lost custody of her child, alimony, and her home due to her 8-year prison sentence for drug possession, child endangerment, and providing false information to the police. She received a 1-year prison sentence for drug possession, child endangerment, and providing false information to law enforcement. If she maintains good behavior, she may be released in 5 years. However, she will not regain custody of Katie. On a positive note, Katie is thriving. She has a strong bond with Victoria and her father and is living a happy life. Furthermore, it was revealed that Natalie's parents had provided false testimony in court, which resulted in the loss of custody of Victoria. Consequently, I informed the police, leading to the investigation of a 25-year-old murder case involving Natalie. On a positive note, circumstances have since improved for both Victoria and me. We are now married and reside together with my daughter Victoria, and I are expecting a son in the fall. My quality of life has improved. My parents are still learning English. However, Victoria is learning a great deal of Japanese. With regard to marriage and fatherhood, my brain is inclined to exercise caution, but my heart is more optimistic, believing that not everyone is malevolent. In conclusion, I would like to express my gratitude to those who have read this text. From an early age, I aspired to become a doctor. However, during my final year at university, I had to reconsider my career path due to financial constraints. My father was injured at work, which led me to pursue a career in medical assisting to provide financial support for my family. I was particularly drawn to the shorter study period and the opportunity to help people. This is also where I met my future wife. Life has been relatively positive since then. Over time, we were able to overcome our financial challenges, which led me to consider pursuing medical school once again. My wife was fully supportive of this decision. Following our discussion, my wife became pregnant. I was able to perform well on the required examinations and was subsequently offered a place at a number of educational establishments. My wife was delighted, but following the birth of our child, she was diagnosed with postpartum depression. This resulted in a challenging period for us, but we were ultimately able to overcome the difficulties. I was required to travel extensively for my studies. During this period, I was frequently absent from home due to interviews. Between the ages of 4 and 6 months, our child required significant care, which placed additional demands on my wife. Our romantic life was adversely affected for approximately a year following the birth of our child, largely due to these circumstances. Consequently, we made the decision we ultimately selected a school in a different state, despite my previous enrollment at a local institution. My wife was eager to accompany me, and the other school boasted a superior reputation, a desirable location, and an attractive scholarship offer. However, the arrival of our child prompted a re-evaluation of our options. We were not inclined to utilize daycare, and my wife was nearing the completion of her studies. Student loans were refinanced, so this presented no additional financial burden. It was decided that it would be most beneficial for her to remain in close proximity to my parents and to maintain her employment. They are highly supportive and provide childcare on weekdays. Additionally, they offer her encouragement when she requires it. The plan was to relocate them in the spring, contingent upon the easing of the pandemic and the availability of savings. This would have allowed her to take a couple of years off work without any issues. Until late October, our relationship appeared to be functioning normally. However, in a sudden and unexpected turn of events, she informed me of her intention to terminate our relationship. I was taken aback and could only offer her my support and encouragement to make decisions that would bring her happiness. I recognize that this response may have seemed inadequate, but I was simply unprepared for such a development. I had just called to inquire about her well-being and was therefore particularly shocked by her announcement. We did not speak for approximately 3 weeks after that. Upon my return to town for Thanksgiving, she suddenly ceased mentioning her intention to separate from me. She stated that she had been feeling despondent due to the distance and other factors. We engaged in a candid discussion and decided to attempt to reconcile our differences. However, I was soon required to resume my studies at medical school for a week, after which she terminated the relationship. She was unable to attend classes during the winter term due to the impact of the pandemic. As I was waiting at the airport for her, she sent me a text message indicating that she required some time to herself. Consequently, I stayed with my parents for a few days. When we eventually met to discuss the situation, she admitted that she was unhappy with my decision to pursue a career in medicine. It transpired that she had been reluctant to tell me this earlier. I had presumed that she was afraid to tell me this information. When I inquired as to whether there was anything I could do to alter her feelings, she revealed the most significant detail: her future was either going to be with me or with medical school. I ultimately decided to pursue medicine, which was the most challenging decision I have ever had to make. As a result of my choice, my child will be raised in a single-parent household. I suggested that we engage in couples counseling, but she was not amenable to the idea. Upon inquiring as to whether there were any potential avenues for modifying her stance, she was unwavering in her refusal. It became evident that she was no longer willing to assume a secondary role. I am still grappling with the implications of this decision, particularly the prospect of reduced interaction with my child. Given my frequent relocation due to professional commitments, it is likely that I will be separated from my child for extended periods. I am exploring the possibility of mediation as a means of resolving our differences. It is possible that this course of action may prove beneficial, although the specifics remain unclear. She has proposed a division of assets, including financial accounts and personal property, as well as joint custody of our child. She has even offered to purchase my share of the jointly purchased items. However, I am uncertain about the child support arrangements, given that I will not have employment for the next 3 years. It has been 5 years and she has been earning a respectable income. I am uncertain as to why I am disclosing this information. Perhaps it is because some individuals here may have experienced a similar situation. It is unclear why the world has become so chaotic. I have provided an update to the aforementioned information. My wife suddenly requested a divorce. We have been together for 6 years and married for 2. We have a child who is 1 year old. My wife and I have been together for 5 years. We had previously agreed to attend mediation, but she subsequently cancelled it. She stated that she wished for us to address our issues independently. Following the Christmas period, we had planned a trip to New Orleans, which we intended to use as an opportunity to relax, enjoy good food, and spend time together. However, last night, I decided to investigate her phone while she was unconscious. I was particularly struck by the content of her conversations with her sister. The messages from my partner's best friend were deleted. I immediately suspected something was amiss, so I accessed her social media and found the deleted messages on WhatsApp. While she had deleted her messages with her sister and best friend, she had not deleted a group chat that included all 3 women. They refer to themselves as lust MILFs, a term used to describe divorced women and those who have never been married. Subsequently, I discovered that she had been in contact with another male partner. She had even expressed romantic feelings towards him. She had also informed her friends that she was distressed about her menstrual cycle, which had been delayed and was characterized by irregularities. She was disseminating false information to her friends about events that had never occurred. My sister, whom I had assumed was my close associate, was openly untruthful with me, appearing surprised when I informed her of the divorce. They even examined my phone records for any evidence of wrongdoing on my part, but found nothing. It is evident that the reality of the divorce prompted her to regain her senses. She informed this individual that our relationship was over, professed her love for him, and stated that she had no feelings for me but was willing to work on our marriage. The individual in question, with whom I have no prior acquaintance, had the audacity to assert that he was indifferent to the well-being of our child, that he could serve as a more effective parent than I could, and that he loved her more than I ever could. He requested that I assume responsibility for our child while she engaged in therapy, but it subsequently became evident that she had transferred custody of our child to me so that she could pursue a romantic relationship with this other individual. She is, in my estimation, wholly deplorable. I am unable to comprehend how she transformed from the woman I had married into this person. She attempted to conceal her actions, but I discovered the truth through the use of my own resources. She was blissfully unaware of the situation. Just yesterday, she was boasting about how her patients always want to see pictures of me and our son, saying we are both good-looking and look like twins. It's as if she's living in some distorted fantasy world. I am utterly blindsided by her actions. She has a tendency to rewrite history, remember things incorrectly, and outright fabricate information. It's akin to the phenomenon of the affair fog, where individuals resort to any means to absolve themselves of responsibility. In her own account of events, I am currently awaiting her departure from her place of employment. I am, in fact, situated in the parking lot at this very moment. My intention is to confront her at the same park where a proposed marriage. Following this, I will present her with the divorce papers and return to San Francisco. I have also neglected to mention that numerous individuals have been monitoring my social media activity and sending her any posts I have made. The situation has become increasingly bizarre. As soon as I arrived at our agreed-upon location, she became aware that something was amiss and began to cry. I was taken aback. She apologized, admitted her shortcomings, and expressed regret for her actions. She said she did not recognize herself anymore and that she hated who she had become. She inquired about the source of the information, asking who she needed to cut out of her life because they could not keep a secret. She believed it was either her sister or her best friend who had revealed this information. I simply stared at her and stated that it was irrelevant who had disclosed this information because it had been beneficial for me. That is what I would have done if I had the opportunity. The issue is not how I found out. The issue is not that she attempted to conceal the incident, rather, it is that she did so at all. She concurred and offered an apology once more, yet her demeanor suggested insincerity. Her initial response was likely an accurate reflection of her true sentiments. She acknowledged that her actions were unacceptable and that she was aware of their wrongfulness. However, she attempted to justify her actions and explained her perspective. She stated that she would be forthcoming and transparent, yet the reality is that the incident began with a different individual, not the one I was aware of. She asserted that it all commenced last October with a different person. Notably, I hired a pest control specialist. The individual in question was a married man in his early 40s with 2 children. She informed me that she was experiencing feelings of loneliness and isolation following the birth of our child. She began engaging in sexual text messaging with a male colleague. She asserted that the content never progressed beyond the initial stages of sexting. She stated that she felt uneasy after sending such messages and blocked him for a couple of weeks before resuming contact. This pattern continued until March of this year. I was unaware of this individual's actions until she informed me that he was still attempting to contact her. She utilized different numbers and subsequently blocked them. His wife remained unaware of these developments. When I commenced my studies in medicine, she informed me that she was experiencing feelings of loneliness once more. This prompted her to initiate contact with a 26-year-old undocumented tile worker in September. This individual was unable to communicate in English. This was the liaison I discovered. She asserted that she was not fully cognizant of her actions at the time. During my visits home for academic breaks, she presented as normal. We engaged in sexual intercourse. I resumed my studies. She then sent me messages expressing affection. The subject, whom I will refer to as Dovey, engaged in a pattern of behavior that involved calling me every night and engaging in sexual activity with a new partner during the day. I recall her going into quarantine for 10 days due to concerns about contracting the novel coronavirus, also known as SARS-CoV-2. She works in a healthcare setting and she engaged in sexual activity with this new partner for the duration of her 10-day quarantine, while my parents assumed responsibility for caring for our child. Despite this, she maintained her daily communication with me throughout this period. This pattern of behavior was highly concerning and distressing for me. I felt as though I was on the verge of vomiting. She eventually admitted that she recognized the extent to which she had crossed boundaries and taken things too far. She stated that she recognized that I was undeserving of such circumstances and that I was too virtuous to be associated with them. Without any prior indication, she abruptly proposed a divorce. She presumed that if I were to discover her infidelity, I would undoubtedly terminate the relationship. She asserted that these were the only 2 extramarital relationships she had during our marriage. However, this revelation did not alter the circumstances. Furthermore, she expended $4,000 of our finances to assist this individual, with whom she was not particularly acquainted, in procuring a work vehicle. The individual was financially unstable and she sought to provide him with she acknowledged that her relationship with this individual was not a serious one and that her motivation for engaging in it was merely to feel less alone. She asserted that her actions were not intended to blame me or make excuses, yet she repeatedly emphasized that I had chosen to pursue medical education at a distance rather than remaining in our local area. This observation led me to question the reciprocity of our respective actions. However, I chose to refrain from expressing my thoughts on the matter. She proceeded to elaborate, stating that she had never explicitly expressed her feelings for the other individual. However, I lacked the proficiency in Spanish to verify her assertion. I am of African descent, whereas she identified as Latina. She alleged that Google Translate had misinterpreted her statements when the aforementioned individual asserted that she did not care about their son, despite having no prior interaction. She refrained from contradicting him, citing the desire to avoid exacerbating his distress. During their separation, she permitted him to express his emotions. She asserted that she had never engaged in any negative actions. She relayed to him that I am an excellent father, but I was skeptical of this assertion. It is perplexing why this individual would disparage me without having any personal knowledge of me. He must have formed his opinions based on her portrayal of me, but it is ultimately irrelevant. She then inquired about my reaction to her actions, expressing regret and self-loathing. She regretted her actions and did not recognize herself anymore. She expressed a desire to have discussed her feelings instead of resorting to infidelity. She acknowledged that the infidelity only exacerbated the situation. Her actions further alienated me from her, exacerbating the situation. She came to recognize that her unhappiness was self-inflicted and that the problem resided within herself. She attributed her actions to postpartum depression and vowed never to have another child. She also promised to never marry or be in a relationship again and to focus on herself and our son. She expressed profound shame and stated that she would never be able to tell her devout Christian parents about her actions. I responded that I did not react harshly because it would not be helpful. I do not act impulsively. This was an opportune moment to present my position. I articulated that I had done what I believed was right. She claimed to have understood my desire for a divorce but asserted that she believed she could improve the situation independently. She proposed a separation and guaranteed that she would wait for me as long as it took. She stated that she would. She proposed remaining single while I was free to pursue my own activities. She suggested that, with time, I might be willing to forgive her. She was aware that I no longer trusted her, but she was willing to work hard to rebuild that trust. She even offered to return to our place for the night, saying that she would sleep on the sofa bed and that I could have the main bed if I preferred. I declined, stating that I would prefer to sleep in a separate bed. The situation is untenable. If we did not have a son, I would have already left. The entire situation is severely flawed. I could easily find someone else who would treat me with respect and trust. I brought her into my life, into my family, and we had a son together. I was a good partner and father. She did indeed engage in the aforementioned behavior. However, we do have a son together. I discussed the situation with my cousin, who had a similar experience. His wife had an affair with his best friend when their child was approximately the same age as my son. He ultimately chose to terminate the relationship. Initially, he felt a sense of relief. However, as his son grew older, he began to exhibit behavioral issues. He inquired as to why his parents were no longer together. He was distressed by the situation. My cousin indicated that the pain of seeing his son suffer was more acute than the pain of the divorce. He advised me to consider allowing time to pass and to assess my feelings. He highlighted that infidelity is a prevalent phenomenon. He stated that he would be supportive of my decision to divorce her, but based on his personal experience, he advised that it might not be the optimal course of action. His experiences closely align with the findings of the research I have reviewed. Studies have clearly demonstrated that growing up in a single-parent home can lead to significant negative impacts on the child. My son is my entire world, and I have decided to give it a shot. I am planning to cut off contact for at least 6 months to a year, and then I will reassess my feelings regardless of what I achieve. However, if I become a doctor, live out my dreams, and my child does not reach his potential, then what? It was already quite late by that point. I proceeded to my parents' residence and retired for the night. It appeared that she was being truthful. She divulged information regarding an incident that I was previously unaware of. She expressed remorse, yet that does not negate her actions. Having a child inevitably introduces additional complexities.